All right, let's dive right in. Today, we are looking at the absolutely massive, still unfolding fallout from the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. I mean, even years after his death, the real consequences for some of the most powerful people and institutions in the world are really just now starting to come to light. So you might be asking yourself, why now? Why is this all blowing up again? Well, it's because a whole new batch of official files just got released, and it has unleashed this fresh tidal wave, forcing a level of accountability that's raising some very tough questions for people who probably thought this whole chapter was behind them. Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. We're going to trace the fallout like ripples spreading out in a pond. We'll start with the money, the financial enablers, and then move outwards to the halls of academia, the corridors of power, and finally, we'll look at what the official government story actually is. So, our first ripple. It starts where these kinds of things so often do. You follow the money. And this trail, it leads right to the front door of one of the biggest banks on the planet, JPMorgan Chase. Now get this. According to a memo from the U.S. Senate Finance Committee, while Jeffrey Epstein was alive, this is how much suspicious activity JPMorgan Chase reported to the government. $4.3 million. Seems like a lot of money, right? Just keep that number in your head for a second. Because here's the kicker. After Epstein's death, that same bank went back and retroactively flagged nearly $1.3 billion in suspicious transactions. That is almost 300 times more than they reported when he was an active client. I mean, the difference here is just staggering. The Senate memo alleges that top executives weren't just turning a blind eye. They were actively coaching Epstein on how to hide huge cash withdrawals, basically showing him how to get around the very systems meant to stop illegal activity. So you gotta ask, why? Why take that kind of risk? Well, the memo suggests it was all about access. See, Epstein was seen as the key to an even bigger fish, the billionaire Leon Black, who personally paid Epstein over $170 million for financial advice. The bank, it seems, didn't want to lose Black, so they kept Epstein happy. Okay, let's move to the next ripple, because you can see how this starts to build. The money that Epstein was spreading around, it has now set off a full-blown crisis in the world of academia. Over at Columbia University, a couple of dental college affiliates got disciplined for their part in helping Ghislaine Maxwell get admitted. And at its sister school, Barnard College, more than 70 faculty members are now demanding that a trustee's name be stripped from a campus wellness center because of her connections to Epstein. And all the way across the country at UCLA, you've got a petition with over 10,000 signatures calling for an adjunct professor to be fired. Why? Because in an email, Epstein asked him if two female students being considered for a research gig were cute. And the professor's response was, "We'll see. You're terrible." And the list, you guys, it just keeps growing. Former Harvard president Larry Summers, he stepped down from teaching. Yale barred a professor who actually recommended a V-small, good-looking blonde student to Epstein for a project. The longtime president of Bard College is now facing an independent investigation. The whole ivory tower is shaking. This brings us to the third ripple, and this one is international. It's pulling in people from the absolute highest levels of global power, politics, and yep, even royalty. And here, the consequences have been fast and they have been severe. Of course, the most famous name here is Britain's Prince Andrew. He was arrested on his 66th birthday. And the investigation is looking into his time as the UK's special trade envoy, specifically at allegations that he shared sensitive government secrets with Jeffrey Epstein. And wow, he is not alone. A former UK ambassador to the US, Peter Mandelson, was also arrested. A former prime minister of Norway is now facing corruption charges. The executive chairman of Hyatt Hotels suddenly announced his retirement. And so did the top lawyer at Goldman Sachs after emails came out showing she used to call Epstein Uncle Jeffrey. Which brings us to our fourth ripple. With all of this fallout, all of these powerful people getting caught up, what does the official U.S. government investigation actually say about all this? So the Department of Justice and the FBI recently finished what they're calling an exhaustive review of all their files on the Epstein case. We're talking over 300 gigabytes of data. And what was their main finding? Their number one conclusion after digging through all that evidence? They found no so-called client list. Their review also officially confirmed, and they say they have video evidence that his death was a suicide. They found no credible evidence that he was blackmailing anyone, and importantly, they said they found no reason to open any new investigations into other uncharged people based on the material they have. But And this is a really big but. That is not the end of the story. Senator Ron Wyden, who's spearheading that financial investigation we talked about, is now pushing the Treasury Department to release its own separate files on Epstein. He argues the money trail has not been fully investigated. His take is simple: we need to continue following the money.
Okay, so let's pull all of this together. What does it all mean? Well, from Wall Street to the Ivy League, from European royalty to American boardrooms, the aftershocks are clearly still being felt. This has turned into a massive, widespread reckoning. It's forcing accountability in pretty much every sector of the global elite, and it's dragging these associations that were once protected by power and influence right out of the shadows and into the light. And that really leaves us with one final big question to think about. Does this tidal wave of consequences signal a real, fundamental shift in how the powerful are held accountable? Or is this just the very long-delayed, but maybe inevitable, collapse of one man's incredibly toxic network? The answer to that is still being written.